And good morning and welcome to IndieLive.radio on a great sunny Friday here, cold but sunny Friday here in Glasgow. And I'm here with Marlene.
Good morning.
And with Becky Menzies. Hello, Becky.
Good morning.
Becky's here from Get Glasgow Moving to talk to us today. We've got a packed show. Later on, we're going to be talking to Cliff Purvis from Veterans for Independence. But I'm going to pass you over straight away to Marlene, who's going to be talking to Becky about all the projects that her organisation are involved in. Ready to have a chat?
Yeah,
We're really looking forward to hearing from
thank you very
Becky,
much.
aren't we?
Yeah, so Val's sitting here with her Indie Live t-shirt on, and I'm multitasking today. I've got my Pensioners for Independence t-shirt on because I'm going to a meeting, Glasgow Group for Pensioners for Independence this afternoon. I scoot across the town. But yeah, so this morning, this is the second of our series of interviews about the whole climate emergency. So anyone who was listening last week, you heard us talking to Robin McAlpine at great length, about an hour and a half, and about the Commonweal Green Deal plan, which is called Our Common Home Project. So since that programme, we've now got 3 podcasts that are up on the Indie Live Radio website, so you can go in and listen to Robin what he said. It was really good chat to him. So today we're moving on a bit, and we're talking to Becky, who's here. So Becky works for and campaigns for a group called Get Glasgow Moving. I'm sitting here with a flyer in my hand which it says, Get Glasgow Moving. Glasgow is a world-class city. Yeah, I think we all agree with that. We need public transport to match. So those of us who live in Glasgow are going, yeah, we definitely do. I mean, actually, we do have pretty good train service and bus service. It's just that they don't match, and they're owned by different people, and if only they were all run as public bodies. Anyway, we'll get on to talking about that. So Becky's here. She's here as to give us. She's here in a personal level. She's not here as any kind of formal spokeswoman for Get Glasgow Moving. But she's going to tell us a bit about. First of all, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about how it works and what you're aiming to do.
Cool. Yeah, so Get Glasgow Moving is a passenger-led campaign group demanding better public transport in Glasgow. Well, the whole Greater Glasgow region. At the moment, we kind of see the main issues happen with deregulation and privatisation of the public transport when it kind of runs for profit rather than people, which is not compatible with the climate crisis, and it's not compatible with inequality in Glasgow. Kind of the biggest users of buses are those on low incomes and marginalised groups, but we have some of the highest fares compared to our sister city in Edinburgh. You've got £1.50 on your publicly owned buses. You've got £2.50 here, and nearly a fiver for all day. Team that with getting on the subway or the train or different operators, and you're on nearly over £10 a day for travel, which is no wonder why people drive loads of cars in Glasgow.
Exactly, yeah. So has this group been campaigning for long? Because I first heard about it when you did a really nice little talk at the launch of the Our Common Home plan. So that was the first time I'd kind of heard of it, but has it been on the go for a wee while?
Yeah, so it started actually back in 2016, so it's been nearly 4 years now they've been going, but it was, as I said, it was a volunteer-led campaign group, and they actually got funding from the Foundation for Integrated Transport, which is a great foundation to get a campaigner, and that resulted in me last July.
Great.
So part of my role is just ramping up the campaign and getting the word out there to everybody, and kind of trying to get out on the ground, speaking to people, and just getting the word out there, especially with us declaring a climate emergency last year. It's very timely. Public transport is one of the biggest kind of things that can
make a big difference to that, can't
and quickly as well, because we need it quickly. There's loads of other things that will take years before they actually have a change, but things like having affordable public transport can happen pretty fast. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and sort of one of the talking about Glasgow being a world-class city, that another world-class city that I occasionally visit is Berlin. You're in Berlin, you just go in, you buy a day ticket, or a 3-day ticket, or a 5-day ticket, and then you go anywhere. It doesn't matter. They've got different kinds of subways and different kinds of trains, and then there's trams, and then there's buses. You just show them your ticket.
Your one ticket.
That's that.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember when, I mean, it was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was when Abellio took over the ScotRail franchise. And I do remember they said they were going to, one of the things they were going to try and set up was a one ticket for trains to buses. So I'm assuming, since that has never happened, that it was the bus companies who didn't want to do it.
Yeah, so with that, there's this kind of thing. It was actually the Transport Minister came out last year's announcement that you can now use your smart card, like your ScotRail or your kind of your subway card or whatever, across all different modes and different operators across Scotland. This is a kind of innovation that's been going on since about 2002. They have it in London. It's called the Oyster card.
Yes, that's
easy.
right. Yeah, I've got one of those for when I'm in London.
Yeah, so
Can I ask,
Yeah.
did Glasgow, I mean, I don't use the public transport as much as I used to, although I do use it a fair bit because I've got my bus pass now.
Yeah.
But did Glasgow not used to have a thing called the Trans card long ago? Is
So
it?
there was Trans
Yeah.
Clyde. That was used to be our big
Yeah,
Trans
yeah.
Clyde, Clyde Wine, I think it was. or
When
something
we
like
had
that.
Because
we had Strathclyde region, probably.
Yeah.
But now, because of all the deregulation, that's kind of going by.
Yeah,
because
so used
we've
to have-
actually gone back the way, really, haven't we?
Which
Yeah,
is the
good
funny.
point.
We used to have one body that overseen all the transport, which was Strathclyde Passenger Transport. It's
That's
now
right, yeah.
Partnership for Transport, which is this horrible word that we don't like as a campaign, is partnerships, because partnerships are just, it's kind of private companies they're having a little to and fro with local government and being like, oh, we'll give you this if you give us that, and that's why we don't like it, and there's no democratic accountability within that. We don't believe for us, and kind of the biggest thing with not having one card, you've got the zone card, but I think it's like nearly over £2,000 a year if you want every zone in Glasgow, which you might as well just get a car.
Might as
We're
well,
sending the really, really wrong message to people. Like
Yeah.
they said, you go to places like Berlin or in Vienna, and they've put public transport to €1 a day, so it's €350 for the year, and you pay that up front. And
Wow.
they've banned cars, large in part from the city centre, but they have a great public transport alongside that. Whereas if you say to people here, you can't drive your car, they're going to be angry.
Yeah, they will be
because
angry. Yeah.
it's really expensive,
Yeah.
it's not reliable, and it's difficult to get around on public transport. But if you have these two measures at the same time, which you can do with legislation, then you can change it quite fast.
Would it need legislation? It couldn't somebody be something that Glasgow Council could go ahead with?
Yeah, so we actually have so we campaigned alongside Friends of the Earth and Unite Community and Unite Scotland for powers in the new Transport Act for councils to run their own buses, so for publicly owned buses and for franchising of the buses, which we won. They voted that through last year, so the council could in theory set up its own bus service, and it could regulate the buses through franchising. However, it's likely they're going to go down the partnership route, which again we don't believe is the best thing for passengers or the environment or for workers. It's just more of the same, which we've had for years, and it's not working. But the other things you could do, they have things like the working place parking levy is quite a controversial issue. There was some, which I totally understand the issues with it, but if it's done correctly and it's not passed on to employees and it's put on to actual employers, and you can use it. They've done it in other countries, and they use the massive revenue to fund the public transport and things like the low emission zone. And they do have measures. They could cut the number of cars coming in and out of the city centre if they wanted to. It's just whether or not there's the will to do it.
It's a whole interesting kind of. It must be difficult to think of the best sort of track through it, because you've got all sorts of different things to balance. Something like you were saying just now. Well, if you just tell people they can't bring their cars into the city, they'll get annoyed. Which, and kind of fair enough.
Yeah, definitely.
It's sort of fair enough. But then you've got to balance that with how do you make it? How do you do it to some extent, but also make it just worth everyone's while just to be able to get on the bus?
Yeah.
And I know what with me and. So I'm sitting here and I've got my bus pass, so it didn't even cost me anything.
Gold dust now.
But you kind of go like one of the buses that goes past the nearest stop to me is one every half hour. Okay, I mean to be fair, they are pretty regular. They do come at the right time, but one every half hour.
No.
It just doesn't work. Now the other bus that comes by the same stop used to be one every 10 minutes. And that was great. It didn't matter if one of them was missed out. You never had to wait long. If it was a bit late, it didn't really matter. But now that's back to one every 15 minutes, which is kind of still okay. But if one misses,
Yeah, you've
You're
got
stuck
half
there
an
for
hour
half
wait.
an hour, and it's at that point, and then you say, I suppose, I'm absolutely certain that the bus company, they're just looking at how much income they get for a route.
Yeah.
That's where there's no accountability, isn't it?
Exactly, and I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. Obviously, we hear a lot from bus operators. It's congestion. That's why people don't get the bus. Which congestion is a big issue. But the Scottish government's put in a 500 million fund into building priority lanes, and it's going to be in the motorways. And we've heard from Glasgow City Council they're going to be obviously wanting some of that money to put priority lanes in the city centre. But our argument is if there's no buses to run on them, then what's the point?
What's the point?
And I think there's places that have other in Switzerland. They have this thing. They basically the frequency of the bus service depends on the population size. So they have, I think it's a place over 200,000. I think it is population size. There's a bus every 10 minutes, and the smaller it gets, the less likely you are. But then there's a wee town. I think it has like only a couple of hundred of people, but it has a bus every half hour. But that bus takes you to the train. You have a 3-minute wait, and that takes you into the city centre. It runs till 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday. That's unheard of in Glasgow, and I think. We used to be based in Kinnan Park, and the only bus I could get from the south side to Kinnan Park was a number 90, which runs twice an hour.
Yeah.
Normally didn't show up, and it stops after 7 o'clock during the week.
Yeah.
And you would say the south sides are it's in the city. If you were in any other city, that would still be classed as part of the city, whereas here we seem to have a kind of just judged it completely wrong.
Well, I'm afraid
with
I'm a bit guilty. I just go, south side, where's that?
Yeah.
There's a lack of sort of joined up thinking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask as well, Becky, is it not the case is true also that the profit motive means that bus companies like cherry pick the most expensive routes? So, for example, I was involved in a campaign to save a bus to Kelvindale a year or so ago. They chopped a bit the extremities off because they weren't paying so much and just kept the lucrative bit in the middle.
Yeah, that's interesting because number 4 is one of the ones that goes by near to me. When that was being done, we were up in arms, and one of the it's a lady, I don't know her that well, but I bump into her at the bus stop, and she'd found out, she'd got somehow or other, she'd got the email addresses for the executives of the bus company, so she was giving them out at the bus stop, telling us all to email them, and we contacted, and actually Broomhill isn't affected because now the terminus is in Broomhill, so we still get them all. But they're gradually cutting back. Even so, they're still gradually cutting back.
Well, the number 4 is a key one, and I think I have a feeling I might know the woman that was handing out the numbers because we have somebody who's a former on the campaign. She's just started up an online petition actually on 38 Degrees to save that, to reinstate the old bus route for the number 4.
Yeah.
So it's those areas you're talking about. So that's now actually online. So if anybody is affected by the number 4, there is a petition.
Well, I was inundated by messages from people that were affected, and they were mainly young people and elderly people.
Yeah.
A lot of them living in Kelvindale, which is really quite isolated in terms of buses now. And on one side, it's got, I think they call it Heart Attack Hill, that comes up from the train station, a very, very steep hill. And it's actually quite steep coming up from Great Western Road as well. And a lot of people used that bus to get to like doctor's appointments, college, university.
And it's what Becky was saying, it's the folk. I mean, there's plenty of folk in Kelvindale with their own cars, so they're not really affected, they're just getting but it's the people that don't have them.
That's right.
And who don't want to walk up that really steep hill.
Often elderly people, because as you get older, sometimes you're not allowed to drive, or you can, or you maybe just don't have the money to afford it.
And if you've got the doctor's appointment, then there's something not quite right with your health. So.
And another, what they did do is they put in a wee special bus, the M3, or it was an M bus, but it was really badly timed. It was almost like doomed to fail because what they put it in on a use it or lose it
I've
basis.
heard that before. That's a lot of happens across.
And
Glasgow.
and the time that it arrived, near the university was like too late for the lectures on the hour, but far too early for the next one. So it was almost doomed to fail because it wasn't a time that suited people.
Yeah. I think that goes back to the whole argument of public transport is a public service, and in my opinion all public services should be run for people, not profit. They shouldn't be run in the interests of, because that's the thing, private companies have to make money to survive. That's
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
fine. That's their
yeah.
prerogative. That's what they have to do. But people need to get a bus to the hospital
Yeah.
or to appointments, need to see their family, and it's that kind of argument that, yeah, you can cut it to make it more profitable, and yeah, they might still be able to get this bus from 3 stops down, but if you have mobility issues, or
can't.
even people, we don't even think of people with mental health issues, that could be anxious, or changes
Yeah.
to their routine, all this kind of stuff that
Yep.
doesn't get thought about when things are run for profit, because they take out these routes, and we hear story after story across Glasgow and the surrounding areas of people being like, oh, yeah, they put it back in on a use it or lose it basis, or and it's you do see I see hundreds of buses going through Glasgow, and they say congestion's an issue, but I just see loads of empty buses, and I get this is the kind of argument that we have, is if you had public control over what buses were on, you could then ask the people when they travel, put on smaller buses, because there's no need for double deckers going at certain times of the day.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like, from my opinion, from what I've seen, that there's any engagement with passengers of when they need to travel and what routes people need are socially necessary. They just want the profitable one, which is where you have a complete lack of understanding.
Got a couple of comments here
Okay.
in the chat box for you, Becky. We've got James E, and he's saying that when he returned to Glasgow 11 years ago, the area he lives in had 4 buses on the route. Now there's only 1, and it's supposed to be every 10 minutes, but often 2 or 3. This is a famous one. 2 or 3 come along at the
Wait
same
for buses.
time. Yeah.
It's because they're scared.
I'm sorry for laughing, James, but we're not laughing because it's happening. We're laughing because it's so familiar.
Yeah.
And also, Ronnie R is saying the thing is that you can use your train ticket on the bus if the train is cancelled, so it is possible.
Yeah. So that, I guess, coming to that one about the trains being cancelled, it is great when you can use it, and often your train ticket, if you have a rail card, is cheaper than the bus. So sometimes I actually quite enjoyed getting it on a bit cheaper, but that's the kind of, then you've got people, the buses does take longer, and it might not go the exact route you need to go, and that's people being late, but it should be a case of you just have one ticket you can use across all of them at all times. The reason we don't have something like that is because private operators, they're in competition with each other, whereas we want to see buses, trains, subway, and even rental bikes work together with one ticket. You have an affordable daily cap. It's not kind of radical thinking or this crazy thing. This is common sense that most cities have, is the crazy thing. And the thing about 3 buses turning up at once, I see that all the time. I'll be waiting and I'll be late, and then 3 of them turn up. And I guess that comes back to the congestion issue, which is definitely an issue. However, I think getting people on the buses, the kind of price of the bus, you might as well just drive your car. Like, it is very, very expensive. As much as we hear congestion's the only issue, it's not. It's a whole spectrum of things.
Yeah,
I mean,
very
I
much.
was quite taken when you and I were just emailing back and forth about what we might talk about this morning, and I was quite taken that you mentioned, the whole thing about inequalities, because I hadn't quite thought about it like that. I've been thinking about it in terms of, Glasgow becoming a low-carbon city and everything, and, reducing its carbon kind of footprint. But, of course, that's the whole other side to it, isn't it, inequalities. And it's the people who don't have much disposable income who do need access to public transport, and it is expensive.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes, with the environmental movement, and it does sometimes forget about the poverty aspect of everything, and people in low incomes, a lot of the measures you want to bring in are going to hit the people in low incomes the hardest. Like, electric cars are super expensive. Yeah. And, the government's giving out loans for this, but if you're in a low income family, like, that's not ideal for you, but it's also the kind of, Glasgow actually has, I think it's only around 49% of households have cars. We're actually not.
It's much lower than I might have guessed.
It's lower than you think, and I think as much as we see loads of cars in Glasgow, actually, if you look at the statistics, not a lot of people have access to a car.
A lot of them are possibly coming in from out with the city as well.
Yeah. So, and the biggest kind of users of buses are people in low income and women and single parents who are particularly women, and women are the biggest users, and they're also the most affected by poverty. I had done a master's before I got this job in human rights and international politics, and I ended up focusing on Scotland, and women's poverty is a women's human rights issue, because obviously austerity impacts women the most, and that's kind of where I come in from rather than an environmental side of things. I've now got a bit more savvy on that side of things, and it is something I'm passionate about, but it's this kind of thing that actually these two come together, and public transport's at the heart.
You just need to get on a bus and you can see that.
I know.
Elderly women as well. Well, young women too, but often elderly women. Sorry, Marlene.
No. It's good. No, it's really good to have brought that out in this conversation. Actually, I think that's a really important kind of thing to bear in mind. And as you say, as long as you've got private companies competing with one another, that's going to get lost sight of.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ironic, isn't it? Because in Liechtenstein, they've just made all the public transport free. Now, okay, Liechtenstein is really wee. It's probably weeer than Greater Glasgow is. And it hasn't got a big population. But the other thing about it is it's an incredibly well-off little country. So they've got the excess cash. They just go, right, easy thing to do, we'll make it all free. Keep people out of their cars. And yet over here, well, maybe we could afford it, but it's the folk who really could benefit from that you know, are kind of stuck paying fares until they get to the age of 60.
Yeah.
And it impacts
So
on
can we-
everything, doesn't it?